theology. He's the expert. Okay. All right, folks, get ready. We got a nice agenda this evening. Let's kick this off. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Are there any announcements? Well, speak at the same time. John, who's with us electronically?
Dave Schultz is with us and Dave Holly from Mars.
Hi, Dave.
Good
Jay,
evening, Mr. President, managers.
I like that effect. Is that from your stereo or? Okay, never mind. All right. Well, I'm glad they're with us. Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
So moved and seconded.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
The agenda is approved. Let's move on to the public forum. Is there anybody here that wishes to speak? We could either, Mr. Rick. How are you, sir? Good to see you.
Good evening, gentlemen. Rick Wire in Baytown Township here for two different reasons. We have a new development coming in that's been submitted. It's in a revised state with us and with the township and with the watershed. And township just wanted to ensure, so let me make sure I get this both ways. I both told our township that I trusted you guys would give it its appropriate review and not let them slide on any of the facts or details. And that's my request here tonight, is just to ensure it's a property with some trouble in terms of drainage and wetland and road access. And so the developer is doing what they can to fix the maximum number of lots in there. And I just told our township that I trusted you guys would make sure that anything they did would not be negatively impacting on the surrounding neighbors and those types of things. You guys are really good at dotting the i's and crossing the t's. We just would like to request that you make sure to do so on that property. I don't even know the name of the development. It's just north and east of here. It's just right out behind
McDonald Lake Estates.
McDonald Lake Estate. So that's it. And the reason I'm coming tonight, even though it's not on your agenda yet, is after 10 years of service with Baytown, this is the end of my tenure.
No.
So in January, I do monitor all your agendas. I look at everything and I have come on occasion. I was the rep from Baytown Township for the watershed. And so you'll have a new person assigned to you sometime next year. And it's been a pleasure working with you guys. I like the way you work. We do have another watershed that runs through the township and it's a lot more difficult. I don't have the same expertise nor the same response time. John's always just great at getting right back and it's been a pleasure to work with you guys. And just came to say goodbye and ask that you
2 items.
take care of our new development.
Fake hug. Just kidding. We will miss you, sir.
Yeah.
And we know that you've been excellent from what we know about your interaction with us. And of course, be assured that we will be on it and we're going to make sure that we're going to take care of everything. My dad used to say, in God we trust, all others pay cash. You got it. Well, sort of, something like that.
That was it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Help yourself to some refreshments, please. And feel free to stay if you like. Okay. Any other items? Okay, not hearing any. Let's move on to the consent calendar. All right, for the consent calendar, I'd like to go ahead and pull item B, the Karen Drive Apartments in Woodbury. Do any of the managers have anything they'd like to pull or review?
And I'd like to just a brief discussion on item C.
On item C, so we will also pull item C, which is the Lake Elmo Park Reserve Pavement Reservation, sir? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so items B and C. Otherwise, I would like to make a motion to approve all the other items in our consent calendar. Do I have a second?
Second.
Yes, did you have something, sir?
No.
Okay,
I just said second.
all right, it's been moved and seconded.
Aye.
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 The consent calendar is approved. Let's move to permit 2024-41, the Karen Drive Apartments. Mr. Engineer, please lead us.
Mr. President, managers, including your packets, permit review memo on this project. The site is just north of the Black Diamond site in Woodbury. If you remember the permits, various permits for that site. So it's right to the east of Settlers Ridge Parkway and to the south of South Frontage Road or Hudson Road in Woodbury. The project involves 2 apartment buildings with a parking lot in the center and then access road from Karen Drive to the south into the parking lot and then an extension to the north for potential future development at the corner of Hudson Road and Southern Ridge Parkway. I emailed the managers this afternoon about issue with the trail. See if I can find a figure that shows. So this isn't the best figure, but because it's pretty busy, but the apartment building again is here and here. And then this is the parking lot in between. And you can see a gray solid line that skirts the wetlands and then crosses over here and then connects up into the Hudson Road. So this is a wetland, and then this is a stormwater management facility here. The watershed district rules say that you cannot have a mold, or you can't mow within a buffer without the watershed district's approval. And then later on, the rule for buffers around wetlands says mowed access to the wetland is allowed as long as it's less than 6 feet in width. And so the intent when the rule was done is access, meaning kind of like a access to a lake or access to a wetland that has water in it. So the access would be generally perpendicular to the edge of the water. But it could be interpreted that access could be generally more parallel to the wetland, like what the developers. The mowed trail is outside the minimum wetland buffer, so the watershed district requires a minimum buffer of 25 feet. And then requires an average buffer, and the average buffer is dependent on the quality of the wetland. So this mowed vegetated trail is outside that minimum buffer, but within parts of the average buffer. Sambitech is the developer's engineer, and they presented a plan for establishing and maintaining this vegetative plan. And so that plan, I forwarded to the managers. It would include, I think, a monthly mowing for first couple of years until the vegetation was established, and then mow the trail once a month at a width of no more than 5 feet and no lower than 5 inches. And I had a wetland scientist FR and an ecologist review that, and both of them felt that that would protect the wetland. So I just want to bring this to the manager's attention because the rules are a little bit, the rules could be interpreted differently. And so on one hand, the rules would say that the managers need to approve any work within the buffer. But then in another part of the rules, it gives an exception for a 6-foot wide access trail. That's it. So that's why I'm bringing it to the managers.
Okay. Well, let me look at one thing first. The soil restoration plan, have they complied with that?
Mr. President and managers, they have not. So about a year ago, when they had a different design for this site, they were expecting the apartment building, I think, to be more in the center of the site. Now they're proposing underground infiltration in that area because they originally were not treating the runoff from the roof of the apartments, and now they are. And in order to do that, they're using underground infiltration in the parking lot area. And because they stockpiled material here in order to compact the soil, in order to perhaps build an apartment building there, I suspect that the infiltration capacity where that stockpile has been reduced. So that's why I'm suggesting that soil restoration plan prepared.
Okay. So let me address that first. You two gentlemen are here for that reason.
Correct.
Perhaps you'd like to share some information on that. Sir,
Should I come stand?
please.
So, Joe Bailey with Summit Tech, the engineer on the project. We did see that that was a condition of approval for where the underground system is. That was a fairly recent change to the plan and, we confirmed, the soils with soil borings, worked with John on that. So we did see that condition recently and we will work with the and geotechnical engineer to come up with a plan to, rework those soils, before the infiltration system is installed. In that
Sorry about
area.
that. You're too kind. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Go ahead.
No, yeah, so we understand it's a condition and we can work with the geotechnical engineer to come up with a plan that, John and the board would support to make sure those soils are, infiltratable. We can, once it's reworked, excavate to base and bottom and, perform double ring testing or, just confirm the infiltration rates we typically require for our design anyways before a system is installed and buried.
Okay, at this point, how far along are you? How far along are they? Have they done anything whatsoever?
Mr. President, this project's been going on for probably at least 3 years. And I think, I guess I don't understand all the details, but I think they would like a permit tonight for financial reasons.
Yes, so, maybe I can explain.
Your name, sir?
I'm Blaine Barker with Real Estate Equities. We're the developer of the proposed development. So this is a affordable housing development that requires state financing. We have been allocated financing from the state, but that does expire December 31st. So we are asking for an action this evening. We understand there are several conditions and, if there are any concerns, we understand that, but we are asking for an action tonight because we do need this approval from the Watershed in order to close on that financing. And if we lose it, then this development will not be able to move forward.
Okay. Sir,
I just wanted to go back to the compacted soils and I just wanted to check because, potentially you could test that with the, infiltrometer testing and the soils might be okay as they are. So only thing I want to make sure of is in our permit that if they do the appropriate testing and the infiltration rate is good, that we're not also, are we intending to also require them to rework those soils down to whatever depth? That's my only question, because I'd hate to put something in here that's a requirement that might not be needed, is all I'm saying.
Mr. President, Manager Brock, that's a good idea. So maybe changing suggested site-specific condition number 1 to say soil restoration plan, blah, 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 blah. If testing shows current infiltration rates are not to the design.
That's be my thought. Yep.
do the other managers have anything they'd like to add or question? What do you think?
Well, I don't know, I'm a little concerned about process because it seems like we're rapidly trying to do something that we
Right, I get it.
had a
yeah.
chance to look at, and I even wonder if they needed a permit tonight. Why was this even on the consent agenda? Maybe we should have had it right up front, but
That's a good point.
if we need modification to the permit, then, we might not be able to, we could de facto, the board could maybe approve it tonight, consistent with the changes that Manager Brock requested, but obviously we would need to get it processed and
Yeah,
along.
and something like this, our main concern, of course, is compliance.
Oh.
We want everything done right, and it appears the gentleman on the right track. And the surety is for just over $7,000, so that's not a real big number. So we kind of weigh that and look and see what damages you may or may not cause, but the long term is to create what needs to be done with our rules and regs and taking care of the environment. This thing with the buffer, this isn't an issue. I mean, this is something that they could easily work with, establishing that.
Mr. President, yes, I mean, they are providing the buffer that Valley Branch Watershed District requires, both the minimum and the average. It's just a question of whether the board is comfortable with them mowing within average. As I said, our wetland scientists and a wetland ecologist thought that their plan of only mowing 5 feet and no shorter than 5 inches would protect the wetland.
That seems simple enough. I mean, you're protecting everything.
Yeah.
To some extent, you know, with what's happening with the urbanization of the area. So
And
that
then
seems easy.
I can add that, you know, this property was originally zoned business. There's a lot of industrial around this area, and it is a small property when you look at where the wetlands sit on both sides. And so we do feel this is a good fit, but what the city indicated is that typically, you know, there's trails and parks and things like that near residential areas, and this property doesn't necessarily have that. And so this is a requirement of the city that they've asked for us to connect a trail up to the Hudson Road area. And they had originally asked for a paved trail, and, you know, we knew that wasn't going to be an approved use within the wetland buffer from the beginning. And so we kind of work with them and feel this is a good compromise. And really the intent is, you know, this isn't mowed weekly like the rest of the turf on site. It is, you know, a nature trail for people to get out, walk their dogs, enjoy the wetland. And we want to make sure it's maintained well. It's, you know, there's not invasive weeds the first couple of years of maintenance. And then really once it's established, you know, a footpath, one that's not too corrosive. You know, asked us to add some language that, you know, if it is getting too eroded, that actually be taken, it stop being mowed until it is corrected and things like that. So our interest is the long-term maintenance of, you know, a buffer and a manageable trail.
Will we have will we have a maintenance contract with them, or?
As president managers, it's a little bit complicated because the project is in Woodbury. So in Woodbury, the watershed district, if Woodbury's maintenance agreement covers everything that Valley Branch wants it to cover, then they don't have a maintenance agreement. If it doesn't cover everything, then they need to get a maintenance agreement.
And we could do that in spite of or after the fact permit granting.
Yes, Mr. President Manager, is typically one of the conditions of the, well, this, I mean, in this situation, the condition site specific suggested condition number 2 covers this issue. So that's typically done after the board approves the permit, but before they start construction or.
Okay. All right, very good. Seems simple. Yes, Rick.
Couple of comments.
Please.
One is, I'm wondering about the comment in first item in the table under rate. There are several warning statements in the submitted HydroCAD model. Can you connect that to the impact?
Mr. President Manager Gelman. So this memo was prepared and sent out last Friday. Since then, Samatech has submitted documents that address that comment. So a lot of the issues with the model were not on their site. They were, because it's a regional model, offset, but it doesn't affect this site.
Okay, good, thank you. The other comment is just looking at the site. I want to just keep our managers aware of chloride issues. I'm not
Thank you
sure
for
I'm
bringing that
seeing
up.
the kind of design that would really minimize the amount of salt needed for development. It's something that we as a board are looking at much more seriously than we have in the past, and anticipate that in the future there likely be rules that at minimum, encourage, developers to, do what they can to reduce the amount of chloride. There are a couple of statements in the permit regarding that, but they're, I think, fairly minimal at this point. But if there are things that you can do, one of the things that's come up recently is, where is your snow pile going to be? And is there a drain near that snow pile, so that instead of having it sheet drain across the parking lot, which requires a lot more salt than if it's close to, where the drain is, you reduce the amount of salt and the cost involved in maintaining that parking lot safely. And at the same time, reduce the amount of chloride that goes into wetlands and our groundwater. So that's mainly just a comment.
Nothing has been addressed with the architecture.
This drawing does show their proposed snow storage plan. So you can see that they're proposing these areas of yellow to store the snow, which I commented that just visually it doesn't necessarily appear adequate, and I think Samatech agreed, and apparently the developer has agreed to haul the snow off-site if these yellow areas cannot handle it. But you're right, the south building will be blocking shading the parking lot, and so there could be a need or a perceived need for using salt.
Thank you.
Now they're aware. You're aware.
Yep.
Okay.
I have
I'll help your cause. Yes, sir.
comment as well, not necessarily in reference to this property in particular, but John, you mentioned that our rules state that as far as the access to wetlands, that it could be interpreted in a number of ways. Is there any way in a future meeting we can go back and revisit that and tighten that language up in the rules? So it can only be interpreted the way we want, which is a path going straight down to the wetland, hitting it perpendicularly rather than along the side.
Yes, I agree. It's on our list.
Okay.
This has been a Valley Branch rule for at least a couple decades, and up until the last 6 months, it had never been interpreted differently than how we had interpreted it. Now, there's been two developers that have interpreted it as potentially being parallel rather than being.
Okay. Right, with that said, Mr. Brock, please.
Propose a motion if you'd like one at this.
Please.
I make a motion that we approve permit 2024-41 with following changes. One is modification to site specific condition number 1 to allow testing to verify infiltration rates or soil modification if needed. The other one is to approve the vegetation mowing along the trail as long as it's within conformance with the vegetation management plan that has been submitted for consideration.
Second.
So moved and seconded.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
It's approved, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Good evening.
Thank you.
Drive care. Okay, that has been taken care of. Now let's move to the second item, which is C, Vice President Pereira.
Sure. I'm probably perfectly fine with this. I just feel like I need to add the obvious questions. Mainly because like Almo's such a local treasure, it's probably ranks way up there as the best place for water quality in all the metro. And I certainly see that we extend conveniences to our other governmental units, permit fee or surety required. They're creating about 6,000 square feet of new impervious surface.
Mr. President, and Manager, they're less than 6,000 square feet.
This is, okay.
But they're disturbing because they're reconstructing the trails. They're disturbing more than an acre of land. And that's why it requires a permit.
Okay, so the obvious concern would be that they would effectively control any additional runoff from the previous surface, so it doesn't get to Lake Elmo.
Yeah, they're not creating any new impervious surface, not just reconstructing the existing impervious surface.
Right,
Or the little bit that they are creating is less than 6,000.
all right, I just want to again do an obvious check in on just because of the high value of Lake Elmo. So with that, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve permit 2024-47.
Second.
So moved and seconded.
Aye.
All right,
Aye. Aye. It is approved. Okay. We can move on. Partners. Okay. Dates and requests from our partners, volunteer citizen advisory committee. No one at this point, correct? Okay. Mr. Schultz is listening. Barr is listening. We're all listening. Okay. Let's move to business and reports. Administrator engineer, the Downs Lake Water Quality Improvement Feasibility Study. Yes, sir. Lead us.
President Marchand, managers, Tyler Olson from Bar is with us tonight. Tyler led the study and is here to present a summary of that and to have a discussion with the managers.
President, managers, my name is Tyler Olson. Like John said, I'm a water resources engineer with Bar. I served as the project manager for this feasibility study. And so tonight I want to talk through these items that you can see on the screen regarding the study. So give some project background, discuss existing lake water quality in Downs Lake, the modeling and nutrient analysis that we did as part of the feasibility study, and then some overview of concept designs for treatment practices to improve water quality in Downs Lake, and then some discussion toward the end. So just as project background, Downs Lake is located east of Lake Elmo. The drainage area includes the city of Lake Elmo, West Lakeland Township, and Baytown Township. The primary land uses in the Downs Lake watershed are residential, agricultural, and then the airport is another major land use. And Downs Lake is landlocked, so there's no gravity outlet. And the impetus for this study was water quality modeling that was completed as part of the landlocked basin study the past few years. And so the work in this feasibility study builds on that water quality modeling and adds detail, and then also looks at potential improvement practices. So Downs Lake has been routinely monitored since 1999. As you can see in the chart on the lower right of the screen, the water quality, specifically the total phosphorus concentrations, have always exceeded or not met the MPCA shallow lake standard, which is 60 micrograms per liter. The MPCA also looks at chlorophyll A and Secchi depth, which are a measure of algal content and then water clarity. And those parameters are also not meeting the state standard, but overall, what we looked at in this study is phosphorus as kind of an indicator of lake health. As also part of this study, we completed fisheries survey and plants survey or aquatic vegetation. And the key takeaways from both of those studies, which more detail is included in the project report, but there is a poor fish community in Downs Lake. They only found green sunfish, which is pretty indicative of poor lake health. And typically in shallow lakes, when you only have those green sunfish, it also indicates frequent winter kills due to low dissolved oxygen and poor water quality. One silver lining of that survey is that they did not find any rock fish or invasive species like carp. So that's a good sign for water quality from internal to the lake. And then as part of the aquatic vegetation study, they did find a moderately strong plant community. So looking at the DNR's biological health indicator for aquatic plants, they found 10 out of 11 species. And so 11 species would be, a threshold for a good aquatic vegetation health. So we're pretty close there. So a pretty strong plant community. So for the detailed modeling that we completed two different models. One is a watershed loading model where we used a software called P8 to estimate the total pollutant load coming from the watershed to Downs Lake. So from runoff from impervious surface, other land use types. And we looked at both current and future land use scenarios to understand how pollutant loading might change with further development in the watershed. More details on that are in the report as well, but for the sake of this presentation, I'm just going to focus on current land use. And then the other model that we did was for in-lake dynamics. So we used a finite difference model, which helps predict total phosphorus concentrations in Downs Lake itself and looks at some of those processes once all the phosphorus enters the lake. And then we looked at a couple different model years to bookend the sort of range of conditions that we would see in the lake. So we looked at 2019 through 2021, representing a wetter year and then a drier year in 2021. And then those models were calibrated to actual monitoring data that's been collected by the district. So both water quality data and lake level data in Downs Lake. And this slide shows the calibration for water levels, so the water balance. You can see the red dots are the monitoring data and the green line is the model data. So you can see we're matching really well to the monitored data there. And then similarly, this is the total phosphorus calibration plot where the pink dots are the monitored data and the blue line is the model data. Again, matching really well there with a little bit of variability in 2019. And so ultimately what these models give us is they tell us the existing state of Downs Lake, but then they can also tell us what might be required to meet the state standards in Downs Lake, or how can we improve water quality in the lake. And looking at several different sources of pollutants to the lake. And so that's what the pie charts are showing on the bottom of the screen here, are the different sources of phosphorus to Downs Lake for the different years that we modeled. And so using this data and using the modeling, in order to meet shallow lake standards, we would have to reduce the load to Downs Lake internally by 148 pounds, or about 80% of the total load. And by doing just an internal load reduction, we'd bring the average total phosphorus concentration from 126 micrograms per liter to 62 micrograms per liter. So just a little above the shallow lake standard there. And so to get all the way to the shallow lake standard, we would need to reduce an additional 5 pounds, or about 4% of the watershed total phosphorus load. And so the next few slides are going to be an overview of how we might do that by implementing.
Tyler, do you mind if we ask questions midstream?
Absolutely, yes.
Why did Eden Park just pop up out of nowhere in that middle year?
Yeah, so that's a good question, President and Manager Pereira. We modeled Eden Park Pond, or Reed Park Pond, I believe it is here, because in 2020 there was pumping from that pond into Downs Lake, and so for that model year, we had to account for that source of loading.
Thank you.
Yes. So we looked at several different practices to help reduce loading to Downs Lake. The primary ones that we looked at are watershed practices. Filtration basins are what we modeled, and then an alum treatment for in the lake. And so we were looking for practices that were cited more at a regional scale for large flow through areas in the watershed where we'd be able to maximize treatment, where we could optimize placement of practices where there's not, developments already in place that are meeting stormwater rules. And then we conceptually sized an alum treatment using the sediment coring data that was collected a few years ago as part of the landlocked basin study. We also looked at a couple other potential improvements that aren't quantified in our model, but are more long-term things that could be looked at if the lake continues to not meet water quality standards. One of those being replacing old septic systems around the lake. So working with Washington County on their inventory and making sure that old systems are being replaced. As development occurs and tree canopy grows, looking at street sweeping throughout the watershed. And then there's also a special case. Yes,
Quick question,
Mr.
sir.
President.
Is any bacterial loading analyzed? Reported?
Not as part of this modeling.
Okay.
So yeah, E. coli from septic systems. Yeah, not as part of this. And then a little bit of a unique scenario here. There's two large ponds on the west side of Manning Avenue, where a lot of the watershed in the northern part flows through. And so But it was brought up during our study that these two ponds might be potential sources of phosphorus from internal loading, similar to what we would see in a lake. We just don't have the sediment data from these ponds to be able to estimate that. And so that would be something we could look into in the future, if that would be a course of action that the district would like to take. So first, I'm going to talk through our conceptual design of an alum treatment. As an overview, alum is a liquid aluminum sulfate is the chemical compound that gets applied. It dissolves in water and forms a flocculant that coagulates and settles to the bottom on the lake sediment and binds phosphorus, so that phosphorus cannot be released from lake sediments into the water. And so you can see the capital cost that we've estimated here on the screen, as well as the total phosphorus reduction in loading, 148 pounds of phosphorus per year. And then we calculated the cost benefit too, to show the cost effectiveness and sort of bang for the buck that you might get for this project. So for this project, it's about $300 per pound of total phosphorus removed on an annualized basis, which is a good cost benefit. And then the next three slides, they're all pretty similar, but they're the three filtration basins that we looked at throughout the watershed, and the design for for the three of those. So the first two are sited in the northern part of the watershed, currently on agricultural fields that are slated for development in the next 5 years. And so we conceptually sized filtration basins to treat runoff that's flowing through these fields and then ultimately making its way to Downs Lake. There's a couple different types of filtration media that could be used for these basins and could increase effectiveness depending on the media that's selected. And then a couple notes for final design, if these were to move forward, is just to make sure that we're minimizing excavation or checking for potential contamination in the soils here. And then also for both of these, working outside of railroad right of way, and then also working with the developers that own these parcels so that we construct BMPs that take into account the development plans. And so this filtration basin, you can see, removes about 5 pounds of phosphorus per year. There's a caveat there that because it's so far up in the watershed, by the time it reaches Downs Lake, the effective removal of that basin is lessened. And so that's why the cost benefit is higher at $43,000 per pound. And then similarly, the next basin, which is just to the east, is also located on a privately owned parcel that's slated for development. Similar level of phosphorus removal. There is a wetland that's been delineated on this site, so we're proposing construction potentially in the upland, again with the caveat that we would work with the developer and make sure that we're working around their development plans and as well as outside of the railroad right away to minimize permitting complications. And then the final basin is located just east of Downs Lake, along a large regional conveyance of flow that kind of collects the whole upper part of the watershed and then discharges onto the east side of Downs Lake. And so here is the most cost-effective basin, just because we are treating so much runoff from the watershed. And so also uniquely here, we've cited this as an offline feature, not necessarily right at the collection point of this drainage area, so that during large storms, we wouldn't, blast the basin and cause operations and maintenance concerns frequently. So you can see the cost benefit here is much less, about $3,000 per pound. So really cost effective in terms of treatment. And so in summary, the study, essentially, we looked at how can we meet water quality standards in Downs Lake. We would need to do that by reducing the internal load by 80%, and then the watershed load a little bit more by 4% or 5 pounds per year. We can do so through the implementation of the practices that I outlined. And so you can see the requested manager action that was included in our packet is to discuss the findings and give direction to staff on any actions that might be taken based on the report. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions or pass it off to the next agenda item.
Okay. I'll get started here. Bang for our buck. What I've read, and by the way, very nice report. And thank you for all the background information. It seems to me that the alum treatment is the way to go, even though it has the shortened or lesser lifespan than the others. But high as that cost is, it's considerably lower than the others. And also, because I don't understand this completely, by treating it more than once, staged treating, if I could use that, that it could have a longer service life than the 12 years, I believe, that it has. And this is a lake that receives a lot of phosphorus, from everything that comes in. So we're not going to use the, we saw a thing up in Nisswa, the nano bubbles. I don't think that's a good idea at this point, but it was promising to some extent. It seems to me, and I could share this with the managers, that is the way to go. And the sooner the better, depending on how we go about this, but also to treat these other infiltration basins or whatever we have that bring more water there. Also, because of the increased urbanization, we're going to see more and more traffic. So to me, it seems that this is the simple answer, as limited as it might be long term.
Yeah, Mr. President, managers, I would agree. And, in lake management philosophy, we do what's called adaptive management. So in this instance, we could apply the alum treatment in a phased approach potentially and continue monitoring the lake as the district does and see its response. And then if more action is needed down the road in 5 to 10 years, then pursue some of these other practices.
Mr. Brock? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're the managers.
Well, go ahead. You had your hand up. I was just in the process of getting mine up, so you're at it.
Well, just a couple comments on the filtration basins for the managers. The third one, I believe, is located within the West Lakeland Township drainage easement. So there's no acquisition needed there. The other two are within future developments. I'm not sure how it works within the rules, but could that be a requirement as part of those developments in the future, as part of their stormwater system to build that type of a system in? Since they're, I don't know, just throwing it.
Oh, that we could benefit economically.
Could we leverage, could the watershed leverage those future developments to put those in as part of their stormwater?
That's a good idea. It would be in our best interest, the community's interest.
Not sure the legality. of
Well,
that.
I mean, it'd be part of the plan approval. I mean, if they're gonna go for higher densities, they have to go through the plan approval. I don't know if it'll totally rest here, but it certainly
Right.
go with the cooperation of the
Right.
West Lakeland Town Board to see that when it's planted, that could be used as beneficial. And I'm sure they'll defer to our expertise here.
Thank you, Counselor.
So
We always take that into account. Yes, sir.
what my hand was coming up for, I was kind of formulating this thought, we need, what is it, 5 pounds of additional phosphorus removal, and we're going to have a discussion a little later in the meeting about phosphorus removal and rates of 2,500 or 5,000. Even at $5,000 a pound, if Alyssa could find some projects within that watershed, we might be able to get our goal fairly economically. So I just wanted to point that out. It's, an item for future discussion, but maybe
Without a doubt.
maybe we'd want to consider targeting some of the assistance from Alyssa. So
That's certainly gonna come up, as well as what's happening in Lake McDonald, because it's very similar and it's actually easier as far as I know. They have some benefits, and of course, unlike what's happening to Downs, tell me if I'm wrong, they have more residential property around them. So it's unlikely that they're gonna have people or entities that are gonna bring more pollutants into the lake.
I believe it's a little less dense.
Sure. Okay. So at this point, what do we do? How much money do we have? How do we get the ball rolling?
I have one quick question.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned in your paragraph on the existing water quality that it is a landlocked lake, but during 2019, 2020, when we were having flooding problems that we pumped into Horseshoe. So at one point, it says over there that would be their natural outflow. So at one point, were the two lakes connected in some way and the development caused them to be separated so that it's landlocked now, or how is that?
Mr. President, Manager Armstrong. I think Downs Lake has always been landlocked or semi-landlocked. There is a resident or was a resident that lived pretty much at the corner of 20th and Main Trail that provided me photos of the snow melt event from 1965, several years ago. And at that time, Downs Lake did overflow into then Tartan Park and would have got all the way down to Horseshoe Lake. So typically it doesn't discharge in our modeling. What we've said is it does discharge in a snowmelt, 100-year snowmelt event. And so we've sometimes gone back and forth and called it semi-landlocked because it does have the potential to discharge, but in the 50 years existence of this organization, it's only artificial discharge.
Okay. And if we were to have weather events like that in the future, would that impact anything regarding phosphorus that, wash away the alum or something?
Probably would wash away all of the alum, Mr. Manager, but, and actually more water might help water quality because it would dilute the pollutants in the lake.
Sure.
But it's certainly something we want to monitor and make sure that, yeah, the effectiveness of the alum is or
As long as you're on the alum, what causes the alum to lose its effectiveness? Is it dissolving and flowing downstream, or, I mean, in your presentation, it sounded like it locks up, the phosphorus, and
yeah,
how does it unlock?
yeah, Mr. President, Manager Galvin, it gets buried by sedimentation. So as you know, over time, as runoff flows into the lake, alum can get buried in the sediment. So in other lakes where we've done alum treatments, when you take a core, you can see the layer of alum that's buried under several inches of sediment. It can also dissolve a little bit, but primarily the burial of alum.
Rick, were you alluding to its limited capacity to bind phosphorus? It seems like a basic chemistry question.
Yeah, we run out at 12. We had 12 years. We run out.
Right, is that what happens?
Effective.
You retreat. But
That's what I'm wondering.
But even if that's the case, from what you read here, it's still more and as expensive as it is, it's still more cost effective than the other ideas that are being proposed.
Mhm.
Well, the other reality is that in the case of a number of our shallow lakes is that we do all the great external loading work we can to reduce external load, but it's still internally loaded, so it's gonna perpetuate its own bad water quality. So in that regard, I think it speaks very strongly and clearly to the need, if we want to see better water quality, the need to do something like alum. On the other hand, I just want us to be careful that we don't put all of our ducks in the alum basket. We still diligently
As
go towards, practices to reduce watershed loads, wherever those may be.
as Mr. Brock pointed out and everyone else, we have to treat upstream. We're not getting out of that.
Right.
That has to be done. We're not just gonna go, okay, we'll just dump this in here and everything's gonna be fine. This is an ongoing process. We're just trying to do this in the most cost-effective way possible. Because of what's happening, there's an onslaught that has been created. I don't want to sound like some Dr. Seuss character, long story. But all of this stuff is coming in. And so how are we going to take care of it? how do the more urbanized areas like where Prince used to live, how is that for Victoria? Again, I always. How do they take care of that? Well, that's a maintenance issue. They have much higher budgets. You know, is this where we're headed? You need to clean it up. And that seems like a expensive but good answer, a good way to go at this point.
I suspect that I'm not understanding exactly how the annualized cost per pound of phosphorus removal is calculated. You know, because if I go back to the previous page in the report, I look at 30 years and the planning level cost estimate for DLO 104 is 450,000 over 30 years. And if I look at the alum treatment, it's 364,000 over 12 years. I haven't done the calculation, but I would expect that the annualized cost, if I just divide one from the other, comes out higher on the alum treatment, or is it that we're removing more alum?
More phosphorus.
Or,
yes.
excuse me, more
Yep.
phosphorus.
So you divide, yeah, you
Okay.
divide that
Thank
by the
you.
phosphorus removal.
Okay, and that's what the number on page 34 includes. Thank you.
Okay,
Okay.
yes, sir.
Is there a possibility of getting some grant funding like we did for Goose Lakes alum treatment?
Mr. President, Manager Armstrong,
Thank you.
of the two lakes we discussed tonight, I think Downs Lake might have a better chance of getting funding than just because Downs Lake includes a watershed of multiple communities, like Elmo, Baytown Town, and Lakeland Township. The reason Goose Lake, I think one of the reasons Goose Lake scored very high is because it's pretty much at the entrance into Lake Elmo National Park. And I played that up in the grant application, that there'd be a lot of public that would be able to see change. So I think that these are probably a little bit less, they would score lower than Goose Lake, but that doesn't mean you can't try and apply for a grant and see if you're successful.
So we're on that path. Essentially going with this treatment, among other things we want to do. And so we're going to try to get as much help with funding as we can. And so John is going to look into that. And then we will look at our budget and everything that's available to us, whether it's local, state, or federal monies available to us. And then we're going to have to tighten the ship, so to speak, in terms of preventing more of this stuff coming in.
So the Clean Water Fund competitive grants are decided around Thanksgiving time every year. So the applications should go out late fall. So it'd be, if you want to wait, can do that. But so we can definitely review the budget to see if there's opportunity that if you want to implement something before the Clean Water Fund grant cycle, you could do that.
So, no, go right ahead, sir, because
Just real easy question. Is there public access to Downs Lake?
I would say no. You could access it from, well, during the tour that we had 2 years ago, we kind of accessed it through public right of way, but there is no public access.
Yeah, I mean, so somebody could carry a canoe down that public.
It'd be a
right of way,
challenge to do
not
that.
really. Yeah.
You'd have to come right off the road there, and I still don't know, that's still probably public property except for the road easement.
Okay,
John Boats.
just curious. Thank you.
I think the other thing to keep in mind in working with Alyssa is what Tyler mentioned, that depending on the location, yes, stormwater BMP could remove a pound of phosphorus, but that doesn't necessarily mean it removes a pound of phosphorus from Downs Lake.
Right.
So that's why this last DMP that Tyler mentioned, that's basically right upstream of Downs Lake. Almost all the watershed to Downs Lake drains through that DMP, and that's why it's removing more phosphorus, whereas from Downs Lake, whereas the first two that he mentioned, yeah, they're removing 4 pounds or whatever of phosphorus, but that's way up in the watershed, so it has very little effect, less than 1 pound or about 1 pound of phosphorus reduction.
Right, so the plan of attack, of course, is Downs Lake sediment. But forgive me the term for where the phosphorus lies.
Sediment loading.
Yes, there you go. Thank you. And then, of course, this upper water body that is introducing, so maybe we can treat both, whatever. We can decide how to attack it. And the urgency, that's the other issue. The urgency, how soon do we need to do this? Is it something we can sit on? Is it something that we need to act on right away? 2025, view the budget and begin to attack that, because we have been actively going after our water bodies and cleaning them up. Sir, is your question?
Yeah, just on the, just to add to that, I was just thinking, and Manager Brock kind of tweaked the idea in my head a little bit. You know, we're gonna hear a number of proposals on how we wanna spend our money in the coming year. I think, you know, we gather all this up after tonight, and then maybe early next year, we can kind of have a list of things that we can, in a discretionary kind of way, put our money towards in the coming year.
Yes.
To use it as wisely as possible.
Yes.
And maybe if one of these lakes is a decent candidate for clean water fund money to help with the gallon treatment, then maybe if we wait until 2026, you know, it's not gonna make a huge difference, because these lakes have been impacted for quite a while, so in an off year isn't really gonna matter a lot, so.
Especially if it's a more likely candidate, a successful candidate.
And then the other thing is, it ultimately empties into the St. Croix, is that correct? Even though it's landlocked?
It's all of Valley Branch. If
Yeah.
all of Valley Branch were to overflow it.
So there's another reason, so we'll have to examine or re-examine our priorities and make decisions about what we want to do regarding this. But I think it's laid out pretty clearly. Thank you, sir. So we'll have to find a way to follow through. Any further discussion? So I'm suggesting for John, his wonderful helpers, to follow this up so that in January, we can revisit this and make a determination about where this sits, where this issue sits, and how we're going to go about dealing with it. Okay. Anything further on this? All right, then. Let's go ahead to the Lake McDonald situation. Mr. Olson, you weren't in on that one, were you?
I helped, Jay Holly led that project, and I believe he's online.
Joe, Jay's with us, okay.
Yeah, I'm
So-
online.
So Jay, nice meeting you, sir. So you heard what we just talked about. And from the reading, it seems that Lake McDonald is actually easier to deal with. They appear to have more diversity with fish and aquatic plants. And so that might be even easier to treat. And it might even be a priority over Downs Lake. I don't know. I'm just looking at that. There you are. I see, is he there?
You've met Jay before. Jay's presented on
Oh, yeah.
the H&H modeling that the managers have been doing. And
Okay.
he was at the open houses that the managers had on the landlocked basin study with the Army Corps of Engineers.
Right. And that's a photo.
That's a photo.
We're not going to see his mouth move or anything.
No, I apologize. I'm having video problems and
That's
I
okay.
had to make a quick trip to the ER right before the meeting was going to start.
Oh, no.
So I apologize for not being there in person tonight.
Not at all, sir. That's fine. I just figure, with what's happening, maybe you're already in your pajamas.
No, I actually have a shirt and tie, but
Okay.
videos are-
So,
one thing,
Tell-
I cannot see the presentation. Looking at
That's
my
okay.
screen here.
carry us through and you can
Okay.
comment when we get to certain points.
Sure. So Jay pulled together this presentation. It's very similar to Tyler's presentation. So I'll just try to go through that rather quickly if I can figure out how this is working. Okay, so again, kind of some project background, existing water quality, the modeling effort that was done, and then some conceptual practices in order to improve the water quality of the lake. So this is the Downs Lake Watershed. It is entirely within Baytown Township. And the hatching area, typically none of that area actually drains into the Downs Lake. So it's the only areas that drain into McDonald Lake are pretty much the immediate area around it. And then very occasionally Clover Lake would discharge into McDonald Lake. So the managers have seen that on the tour. We walked in the area where Cloverdale would discharge it.
In this new development that he was talking about, I suspect that would drain into it.
Yeah, so the new development that Rick was discussing is right here. So it's north of the railroad tracks. This is the railroad tracks. We're right now right here at the township. And so there's a large parcel right in here that is slated for development. And the township, as I understand it, discussed that this week. And they denied the variance request because the variance request was to allow a longer access road in there. So there is only one way in and one way out, and that cul-de-sac was too long, and the township denied it.
Is it by chance 2.5 acres per house?
Yes, I believe this would be 2.5 acres per lot because, or per, 2.5 acres per parcel because they've got a septic system.
So individual septic.
So that project could have come before the board in early January, but I'm guessing they're gonna redesign it now in order to try to meet the township's rules, and that would delay it.
Kind of like what Rick was saying, the township had a whole turnover at this last election, so
yeah.
who knows if they wouldn't try another bite at the apple. With kind of new managers.
Very good. Yes.
So this slide shows the historic water quality of McDonald Lake. The charts that you see in the annual water quality report are on the right side here. The red line is what the state standard is. And anytime the monitoring data is above the red line, it's worse than the state standard. So focusing in on the phosphorus chart here in the bottom right corner, you can see that it was okay in the late 90s to about 2010, and then it's had these higher spikes, and it's pretty close to meeting the standard, but it's a little bit worse. Jay, do you want to say anything more? If so, just let me know.
Jay, perhaps you could elaborate on.
Yeah, so I guess looking at these three parameters, the lake has always done very well with the Secchi depth, which is the clarity of water. So it's always had very clear water. With the algal blooms, the chlorophyll A, the has rarely met the state standard in that, which is somewhat interesting. Usually don't see those switched. Usually if chlorophyll A is high, you have bad water clarity, but in this case, it's switched on there. And then in the past, it has met the total phosphorus standard up until around 2010. And since then, it seems to have changed a bit, and those values have gone up, which is somewhat interesting because the watershed really hasn't changed. Watershed conditions haven't changed since then, but
Okay, if I
we
could
did
ask
do.
you- Go
Absolutely.
ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to comment on the fish and plant surveys. We did.
That's exactly where I was going. Right.
Yeah,
Go
we
ahead.
did. We did conduct fish and macrophyte surveys in 2024. We found that the lake actually has a pretty healthy fish population. They caught a lot of adult panfish, sunfish, and crappies, which is generally indicative of a lake that doesn't experience frequent fish kills due to low oxygen levels. And also had really strong macrophyte community, greatly exceeded the DNR's indices. I think they found 18 native species, and whereas the indices are typically looking for 11. So in that respect, the lake is a pretty healthy lake, both in terms of its macrophyte populations and its fish populations. President Marchand, did you have an additional question related?
No, I was going to ask about the lack of fish kill that Downs has. That's related to oxygen levels, not so much water depth.
Yeah, I mean, historically, a shallow lake would not have fish because of regular winter kill. We're seeing frequency of winter kill go down
So what,
with milder winters. So
what's happening there?
I don't know, it might have groundwater input or something that's taking it from.
I do know that
Oxygen.
had friends that lived on that.
Yeah.
And residents got together and they were doing an aerator for a number of years. I don't know if they still are. This was 15, 20 years
Were
ago.
they doing that?
But I don't know if they're
So
still
they
doing that or
under a
not.
permit because you need a permit.
Yeah, they did have a permit, MDNR.
That would do it.
McDonald is a much larger lake by area and volume than Downs too. So there's a larger reservoir of oxygenated water there. And the center of it does have a fairly deep hole too, that where the fish could take refuge. So those might play into it as well.
Big surface area, better oxygen exchange, right? Okay.
So just like Downs Lake, same modeling was done on the watershed and the pH and using model years 2019, 2020, and 2021 to have a dry year and a wet year and sort of an average year. And just like Downs Lake, calibrated very well for the water level and pretty well for the total phosphorus. So the pink dots are the model and the pink dots are the actual and the blue is the model. So with Downs Lake, Jay and his team found that in order to meet the state standard, you need to reduce the phosphorus load internally by 32 pounds. And if you were able to do that, you wouldn't need to do any large PMPs. And if you were to only focus on watershed PMPs, you would not be able to meet the state standard.
See. And Cloverdale is not even an issue at this point. In other words, we needn't worry about it if we were to follow up on treating Lake McDonald. And there are no other small water bodies that are of a concern.
This figure to the right on the screen shows the typical contributing area, drainage area to McDonald.
Okay.
And it's sure there are some wetlands in that area, but it's pretty small in comparison to the much larger watershed that could be.
Were those examined by chance or no, not an issue? Jay, sir?
Sorry, you cut out there. Were what examined, President Marchand?
Any other water bodies besides Cloverdale Lake that surround Lake McDonald that would introduce nutrients, pollutants, et cetera?
So the PA model accounted for all the natural basins and wetlands around, they were all modeled individually using the PA model to determine that watershed load from them.
Okay.
So, with McDonald Lake, island treatment was determined to be able to meet, if that were implemented, it would, like to meet the state water quality standard. The cost at McDonald Lake is listed here, and then the cost benefit is about $200 per pump process. So this is a photo of McDonald Lake, and I think McDonald Lake is a little bit different than Downs Lake in that the people surrounding McDonald Lake are very, they use the lake. They use the lake for canoeing and kayaking. Whereas I don't think anybody necessarily uses Downs Lake for water quality like that. But at McDonald Lake, they use the lake. And so if you were to improve the water quality as state defines it, as Valley Branch Watershed District defines it, you're again going to improve the transparency, and there's going to be more aquatic plants that grow. So if the managers would like to implement any water quality as we define it, improvement project at McDonald Lake, I think it's very critical to have meetings with local residents and really any expectations about what this improvement in water quality, just like what was done at Goose Lake. But I think it's even more critical at McDonald.
Yeah.
There's been extreme examples, and I think Shakatan was one of them. It's one of our sentinel lakes now where a very shallow prairie lake at the top of was it the Yellow Medicine, maybe, I think. And it flipped in a good way from turbid to clear. The aquatic plants erupted in a way that really set off the locals because their boating was impaired. But it was, I mean, it was ecologically a good thing, and I think that's the point that John is making. Suddenly you can have so much vegetation that it could, not sit really well with the locals, but even though, again, it could be ecologically a good thing to see happen.
As I understand it, I think Coleman Lake and Maplewood also had a similar experience when the alum treatment was done. Lost them quite a bit.
In a good way, but it affected boat propellers.
Yeah.
I think that's what it would do.
Users.
But it didn't load it up so much that when there's a die off, that now we have, all this organic material, to create further anoxic conditions. Not an issue, right, Jay?
That is actually a good question. I wish I could say with certainty that wouldn't do it, but yeah, if you get too much vegetation that dies off and decomposes, that can definitely cause unintended consequences. So generally, that's not, if they're native species, that's generally not it.
Right. So go ahead, sir, because I'm gonna.
I just wanted to point out my perception of a general difference between the two lakes. McDonald, it's essentially a private lake, very held closely by the residents around it, and understandably. And it's a landlocked basin with no outlet. So to put money into this and improve water quality, I mean, that's all fine and good. But we make their recreational use or whatever of that lake for those limited private citizens better. I'm not sure how much it improves overall water quality of the watershed. For Downs Lake, I know it might seem like a lesser lake, but the water that flows through Downs Lake, it's in the project channel and goes to St. Croix.
Right.
So if we can improve Downs Lake and reduce the phosphorus discharges out of Downs Lake, we're helping a much larger
Right.
scale.
Right.
in the big picture. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to throw that general perspective out
You're basically saying that Downs Lake is the higher priority.
in my mind.
Without, I think it should be in everybody's mind. You know, McDonald is good. They're sitting okay to a point. It needs to be treated, maybe incrementally, you know, limited treatment to create a balance or something. But at this point, we are aware that Downs Lake is much more important.
I think part of that calculus too goes back to which one will be available.
Downs?
Yeah.
Pretty easy.
More public access is going to improve the chances of being correct.
Yeah. That's simple enough.
To the margin.
So if the managers don't have anything else,
Does McDonald's have a
Yeah.
lake association?
I think they have a homeowners association, but not a lake association. Tracy,
I happen to know,
Lives-
just because I'm a neighbor, a really good friend of mine lives, probably, it looks like the view is from his backyard. They're very active as homeowners, but nothing is structured though. But, you know, they would like some of that, you know, the aquatic species, they'd like some of that gone. Clearly, they'd like to be able to harvest some of that. And I know that they're pretty active and willing to put money in it if they have a good answer. So you might have a partner with the homeowners because a lot of them have the means and would do what would be right if they, you know, knew what to do. So I don't know if they have access to this report or not, but it's
Yeah.
not an official association, but they're very active.
that is a very good question. I think it might be a good idea to let the folks know about this, because if they want to get involved, this would help everybody, especially if they want to open their wallets. You know,
There's a couple of them that sure can.
well,
But
That's
wouldn't-
why you
which
guys-
wouldn't necessarily help with their weeds though.
No, I know, I
Make it worse.
That's another thing. That's another issue.
Yeah, what their goal is may be different.
So-
And that discussion is definitely
Right.
worthwhile having.
So,
Before,
okay,
I got a
so,
question, so whenever it's.
okay, so, what I wanted to say was we can, again, revisit this in January or whenever we can. And, compare it to, for discussion on downs and available funds and what we can do and see if, it meets with, a higher priority regarding other water bodies. See how we tackle them individually. And so at this point, we just want to give the residents information if possible. I don't know if through our website or we can alert them so that they could look at our website. But that way we can avoid sending them literature if we don't have to. We could do this electronically. Does that sound reasonable?
I think that's part of what would be really useful to do. But I think it's also some kind of a meeting with people that have interest so that
Oh, yeah.
discussion about what the impact would be to, from a treatment.
We could set that up. And if they would like to meet here, whatever, or we could meet at your friend's house, that fancy house. Yes, ma'am.
I did meet with a member of the HOA that was looking at redoing the boat
Yeah.
launch in this lake, so I do have his contact. Could send him some information.
the residents of McDonald Lake have attended some of the planning meetings that the Watershed District has had and the landlocked basin study. So we have a couple of their contact information. We could, if Alyssa has contacts that we don't have, we'll probably have that. But I think just sending the report or sending a link to the report, I think it needs probably some explanation and not just.
Of course, yeah. As Rick pointed out, yeah, meetings. Yeah, not just, here you go, here's what we have. No, I agree with that completely. I think it needs to happen that way. That way we could have the residents with more informed decisions, and then, of course, helping the Valley Branch meet its mission. So, yeah.
So I think Manager Brock was kind of alluding to this earlier.
Yeah.
And that is, it seems like there may be a connection between our next agenda item,
Mhm.
you know, with the partnership with Washington Conservation District.
Our cost share.
Our cost sharing.
Yes.
And the water quality program that's there. You know, especially since this is a, you know, the minor or the sub watershed around McDonald is pretty much all residential. And it's a, you know, a dispersed phosphorus is coming in. It isn't coming from a single source or, you know,
Right.
a point source. It may be ripe for us to look at the possibility of targeting, say, that sub watershed as being, you know, let's put some additional effort into informing people of the, you know, these kind of programs and encourage people to do that. It sounds like the, you know, the residents may be pretty open to it. And in terms of long-term type of a result, we may be able to cut our costs and at the same time have a long-term impact, at least to some degree, you know, within the watershed. I realize that the watershed is a small portion of it compared to the overall loading, you know, in the lake. But I wonder, you know, do we know if that could have enough impact? You know, maybe not the full 32 pounds, but a portion.
Yeah, but public education.
Yeah.
This is very important.
Mm-hmm.
And you were one of the first to bring this up or make this an important issue since you've been on the board. So it's a win-win. Sir.
You know, I think what Rick was saying is an excellent idea. I mean, we put a lot of money into this report and I think we need to use it and show it. So I'm really in favor of some sort of a public meeting or outreach effort. But as part of any meeting we would have, I would like to go beyond just presenting this report and have folks from the conservation district there possibly to talk about what individual homeowners could do on their property. What, you know, what types of things might be available that they could do that would help the lake and things that they might not be aware of. Just use it as a education opportunity for the home residents also.
Get board, Tyler? You'll show up. Alyssa's on board. He's our go-to. Okay, this is all very appealing. So what shall we do, John? What did we give you for your marching orders?
And your President Machado managers, what I heard is that the managers would like to discuss these projects in January and determine, you know, if managers want to implement a project at either lake or to apply for a grant or grants later on. In the meantime, the managers will likely want to have a meeting, at least with the Lake McDonald residents. But that can be decided in January.
Right. And then we could ask WCD, BAR, and other entities to see if that works. And as soon as possible, again, with this priority, looking into grants for downs. You know, to see if we make the cut, so to speak, and that helps us. Okay. Enough? Shall we move on? Okay. Our next item is the cost share program. All right. I'm not exactly sure how to start this. But what I was getting was that we deal with this on a case-by-case basis. So looking at the partial payment policy. This goes with the case by case. We talked about this before. If we know they're going to complete something and they need their money, that's one thing. But this is something that we do for an individual, right? So generally we don't, you know, they're $1.50 short. So when it's done, we'll give you a copy, that sort of thing. So I don't know if that's an issue, if somebody has any further commentary on that. Perhaps you, Alyssa, if you do. Sir, go ahead.
Just a question on clarity from
Yeah.
Ramsey, Washington. Were these cost share projects with residents, or were they cost share partners with larger partners like large landowners or NGOs or something like that?
A good question. They have several different cost share programs. I believe what Paige responded to was for more of the individual cost share, so similar to what Valley Branch has.
I do the legal work for Ramsey, Washington Watershed District, and they have a really nice grid, but they do individual homeowners that are kind of a lower amount and different for schools and governments and lineal projects. And so they really do kind of make a matrix based on who and what it's going to benefit.
So if I could ask you, Counselor,
Sure.
they just, again, on a case-by-case basis, they assume that some particular project is taken care of, and then they make payment when it's completed.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how they front the cost. Most of the time, I think they're paying back and they're going there to see if it was done.
Right.
And they have some follow-up because, they've got to somewhat maintain things
Sure.
too. So of course, they have a pretty large staff that can go out and see that those things get done. I mean, not that, Jeff could do, but they do rely heavily on their staff to confirm their money is being used wisely and as intended.
Okay.
And the conservation district does that for us. So Alyssa's team
I see.
would verify, help design, verify it's been done, and then they circle back for the first several years to make sure it's maintained, that it's still there, something hasn't changed. So,
Yeah, I'd like to think that every watershed does that in one form or another, because it would seem like a terrible waste of taxpayer money as well as an improvement to have something just go away like that.
Andrew Michon, from my part of it, if it's part of a permit for a house that's a rain
Right.
garden has been required, and that's part of our permit closeout, where I have to verify size and design and so forth, and elevations and as-bills that the engineers will review. So that's where I verify the rain gardens, but on our cost share, and the conservation district manages that whole program.
Okay.
So
So,
this first question was really what the managers talked about a month or two ago about
Right.
the partial payment. And so no action is needed from the board at this time unless legal counsel says you need a written policy. Other organizations don't have.
Would it be worthwhile to review the form that people are filling out and kind of give them a little heads up that, let them know that
we don't do that?
the strong preference is to, make one payment at the end.
John,
at
is
the-
that- is
upon
that-
the completion of the
Is that something that's clear with,
I guess I'd have to review the form. I don't know if it's clear, but we do need to update the forms to make Alyssa the contact rather than somebody else separate.
Yep, I'm not sure if it's listed out on the form either, but when we're going through the on-site conversations about the grant program, I do mention that it is a reimbursement program. You
Okay.
Submit all of your receipts, you pay for everything.
so it's pretty clear, and maybe in writing and if need be, but I believe that you express that. So there's no other way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now, we're gonna put you on the hot seat. Hang in there. That's why you're here. Miss Alyssa, most respectfully. Okay,
That could be not so bad today.
no,
Right.
this is good. This man's got a lot of wit. I love it. Okay, here's what's going on. That was a good one, Rick. You want to increase our $45,000 to $55,000. Seems reasonable. Why?
The last 2 years, we have gone through all of the funding. So, this year, all the funding was gone in November, and then we supplemented with some other sources. Last year, I think maybe we had a couple $100 left. I can't remember exactly, but, I do believe increasing the funding for the program would help just increase the opportunities of the program and some more targeted outreach and landowner meetings. Just supporting the amount of projects that we have. So we do have a lot of projects come through in recent years.
So if I could ask you this,
Mhm.
help me as a layperson on this. People approach you for these things? Or do you folks reach out?
It's a combination.
Okay, explain.
So we
Please.
have countywide program, the county pays for the first 2 hours of the site visit for landowners, and that program is promoted through the county in some other ways. And then after the original site visit, the watershed districts individually pay for the technical assistance and design work.
Okay,
And we will do targeted outreach for neighborhoods for the direction of the watersheds or where we see a need. And then we just get a lot of folks from word of mouth and neighbors recommending to help us out.
that's how it works. So when you see a need, how do you guys see it? Do you guys just look at the map and go, hey, what about this? What's the mechanism?
We're guided by the watershed districts and by the county prioritization. And
Okay.
like impaired lakes for water testing and stuff.
So then they contact you first. The county,
Oh,
watershed
yep, yep,
districts? Yeah.
we have maps and reports and studies that we go off of. We're also looking at different parameters like canopy cover and equity and diversity maps and spreading things out that way as well.
Explain the equity and diversity maps. Please.
So equity and access to like natural areas based on income, based on diversity of residents. There's a lot of mapping by like the MPCA and I want to say the Department of Ag, but I'm not sure that's correct, but different prioritization maps, and a lot of grant funding actually requires that it be in designated areas that are hotspots on these maps.
Question for you.
Mhm.
Are you aware of anything that's happening in Cimarron, Lake Elmo?
I am, other than Angie and our education department work in that area a lot.
Gentlemen, go.
So when I was at South Washington Watershed District, started a cost share program from Ray Gardens, and I'm thinking, this will never work. People just want their nice, perfectly cut lawn, from the curb right to their doorstep. And I'm really, really glad to let everybody know that I was completely wrong. It was an amazingly popular program. And the Watershed District had to keep putting more money into it to take advantage of the interest in the public in doing this. And that's the big thing about this is the public is the private landowners, we're leveraging their money by providing a bit of the funding for them to do the right thing. To change their land from something that has marginal ecological value to something that's going to be a lot better. I think it's a big win-win for our watershed district, as well as the individual people that live in the watershed district. And it's a way for when your neighbor does something like this, it's like, well, why the hell are they doing that? And then they talk to them, and they find out, and they learn about the fact that, well, there's a better way to manage our property here, but we can provide for a variety of ecosystem goods and services, whether it's water filtration from runoff or providing more habitat for pollinators. The benefits go on and on and on. We're gonna approve a levy of about $2.33 million.
Yep.
And we're looking at a small pittance of a program.
Right.
That provides a huge array of benefits, in my opinion. So I just want to speak strongly in support of this.
Okay, you have a sound argument, and you're right. But from my perspective, as usual, I want to scrutinize everything. My feeling is that you're gonna find that extra 10 grand to use up, and that's fine. And we need to do that. And the managers have been discussing an increase in our education. And of course, we know that all this is going to ultimately benefit what's happening to our watershed district. That we're trying to attack phosphorus in different ways and create a better environment. So hard to argue against that 10,000. Yes, sir.
I'd just like to say, I see this request as a really good thing, because what that's telling me is that there's demand for the programs and the assistance, and we can reach more people with this. And we have been using up the budget rather than leaving some on the table at the end of the year, which would not be a good thing. So I see it as a real positive.
Rick,
I agree with what people have said. I think increasing it makes a lot of sense. I want to look at the numbers and see a nice straight line increase. That's not what I'm seeing in the numbers, but but I'm seeing a definite increase as things go along, and I think we want to make sure that we're providing enough funding to be able to keep the program going.
okay. Mr. Bill.
I agree. When you said, that last year you ran out in November, so what do you do with people who are coming later? Do you just tell them, try next year, or was it word?
So I'll still go out and meet with residents using the county funds. If there's other pools of money that I can pull from to provide the technical assistance for them, like our soil health dollars or other funding streams, I'll use it. If not, I tell them that I will work on their plans over the winter, and get back to them as soon as we renew our next contract.
Seems reasonable. Okay, John, what do we do? Do we make this so, or do we have to wait for January to implement a change? And I believe don't we have to write up a new contract for this?
Mr. President, managers, you
Yeah.
did just approve a contract for the $45,000.
Okay.
So I can work with Melissa and Jay Riggs to amend that contract or replace that contract, whatever works best for Watershed Conservation District and Watershed District. Present that, Jay.
Does that seem reasonable to all the managers?
Yes.
So we can just direct you to do that?
I put it to a motion.
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to offer a motion that we go ahead and approve an increase in contract with the Watershed Conservation District to an increase of $55,000.
I'll second that motion. It's been moved and seconded.
Aye.
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 It is approved. Thank you. Thank you for listening to us. Thank you for doing what you do. And you get some time, we'll get this going with Lake McDonald, because that would be real helpful.
Yep.
And anything else. Thank you, Ms.
So there's another question before the board that Alyssa.
What now?
I'm done.
Oh, money.
I'm really embracing the Oliver Twist title.
Okay, please.
Go on.
Please, is that what you're doing? Pickens. Go ahead. What's the next question?
The next request is regarding the reimbursement per pound of phosphorus, which is currently $25,000. Introducing it to
$2,500 per pound.
Mhm.
So we want to make it 5,000 per pound. Okay. That's a little tougher one for me because I don't quite understand that. Sir,
I was just gonna ask Alyssa, I know you said it could lead to a larger project. Could you just give us an example? You know, kind of a real world example we could just kind of mull over here, how this would help.
Yes, so, to reach a pound of phosphorus, this is just one example, but, it takes about 3 acres of turf converted to prairie to equal 1 pound of phosphorus, which is around $2,500 to go toward this 3 acre prairie restoration, which on average costs anywhere between $12,000 to $20,000 if you hire a contractor to do the work.
Yeah.
Which ends up being a barrier for folks not to do it. The cost of rain gardens has also substantially increased in recent years, where it now costs $10,000 to $12,000 to put in your average neighborhood rain garden that doesn't involve curb cuts. So, I think just those costs alone sometimes prevent folks from moving forward with the project.
We don't have enough of a carrot to push a project over the edge.
Most of this is upland,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
It seems simple enough. You've got a lot of projects on the burner, so to speak, this sort of thing.
There would be a few folks that I could go back to and try to encourage them to move forward with the project now that there's more funding available per pound.
So is this something that's prioritized the closer you get to a water body,
on the
or it doesn't
program.
matter? See what I'm getting at?
Yep, there's different calculations per practice that determine the phosphorus loading. There's some prioritized water bodies and some calculations that are run that include proximity to water bodies and distance traveled to water bodies.
Right.
It depends on.
Don?
Well, first we're about water, we're a watershed district.
Yeah.
But I also think about the other ecological benefits we get from,
Sure.
turning turf grass or habitat into something has more ecological benefits in addition to water quality. So, that might speak against this, but I think we still need to put our emphasis on water. So,
Years ago, we had the Buckthorn project. And we were getting a request from Buckthorn that wasn't next to water. So we were kind of had a problem with that. And it's nice to use a whole lot of funds to get rid of Buckthorn. It started in my backyard.
The managers did have a buckthorn removable grant
Right.
program. And
Yeah.
the criteria for that was it had to be adjacent to water and it had to be, I think, at least an acre in size. And that there were standards to it. So if the managers are now thinking about some sort of criteria that you need to show benefits to the receiving water body, that'd be a difference in this program, but could be done.
Okay. So with that said, we may not have an answer this evening. We could revisit this, and it's coming up, and make a change. I would certainly be into that. But again, this is for the prioritization of the water. So if we can work something out, we can talk about this further and do something, maybe it'll benefit all of us, you know. The sooner the better. Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, my general impression thinking about this is we'll probably end up with fewer projects, but possibly higher quality projects if we go with the larger amount.
Oh, you
That's
think
just,
so?
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know, but that's what's rolling around the back of my head is that might be the end result.
We did spend all of the cost share budget this year with the exception of $200. There's $200 left in the program and a lot of some of those projects were plant grant projects that could have been larger ones, but the calculations turned out in a way that it was actually more beneficial to go for a plant grant rather than the pound of phosphorus reduction. That makes sense.
Yep.
So I think there is opportunity to potentially get some higher quality, larger scale projects and reduce the overall number of projects.
Mr. Engineer.
Alyssa, so South Washington Watershed District has the $5,000 per pump phosphorus removal. Valley Branch has the 2,500. There's different demographics between South Washington and Valley Branch, but in general, would you say that the projects that South Washington is implementing through this program, because of the higher reimbursement amount, are more, have better water quality benefit, or are you saying they're about the same, or what, do you have any general
Yeah. Good question.
thoughts on that?
There's a lot of people that work in South Washington, so I'm not privy to all of the projects they have, and their programs run a little bit differently, where we just kind of design the projects and then turn them back over to the Watershed District. So I don't always get to see the follow through, but the projects that I have been involved with that have gone through the program were larger scale restoration projects, like 3 to 6 acres per project, full scale restoration. And I think in that watershed district in particular, I don't know if there's necessarily more HOAs, but there's a lot more new residential development, and I have trouble selling folks on plant grants in that, which is interesting.
Maybe we could collect some more data to help us with an evaluation. Thought?
Yeah, and I guess one thing I hope we can take a look at is, rather than us paying the upfront cost, to pay a percentage. And that way, I think that also encourages larger projects. As we go up a little bit.
There's
comment?
Carnelian Marine Watershed District has a program where I think it's up to 50% of the construction cost. So we work with the landowners to develop a cost estimate and then get approved based on that. And they'll get quotes from 3 contractors if they're hiring a contractor. Otherwise, the Watershed District works with them to determine their labor rate based at like $30 an hour and how much time they get to put toward the project to get it done. And it's up to 50% of the actual project cost.
So I think Valley Branch had that its first year of this program, and then switched to what South Washington has, because it's a little bit simpler to use what Valley Branch and South Washington have, because then you're not arguing over whether you should pay for gazebo or something that's related to the project, but doesn't really have any water quality.
Mr. Bill.
There was another line in your paperwork here asking if you want the program to start addressing chlorides. And I would say yes, but how would you go about doing that?
So this is my memo, not.
Oh,
okay. And so I had some big picture questions at the end of the memo.
But that's a good point.
And, we had that workshop
Yeah.
last fall, and you heard that South Washington and Ramsey, Washington have set aside money to either address chloride or allow people to use their overall cost share program to deal with chloride. So that, I guess that's a question for me. That doesn't necessarily have to be decided tonight, but just to get you thinking again about whether the current program is accomplishing what you want it to accomplish, or if there are additions that you want to do, or modifications.
So as far as addressing chlorides now, salt use, starting in August, when I'm meeting with residents, I bring them information on the appropriate amount of salt to use if they're going that route. Just a little handout with show them a coffee mug and this is how much should be for X amount of sidewalk squares. And also let them know that at the environmental center, the South Washington Watershed District actually provides, grit. Just,
Chicken grit.
yep, chicken grit that you can go pick up for free as a resident of Washington County. So I help promote that program. We talk about salt alternatives. And I give them the salting.
So there's not necessarily a cost share program involved with chloride at this point. Who funds the grit?
South Washington
Some
Watershed
Washington
District.
purchased it, and I think it was delivered last week and they ran out. Maybe plus another quarter.
Gizzards?
But I think it's similar to what you would give chickens for gizzards, but it's just crushed granite essentially.
Right.
Yeah.
I used to do poultry. I ate them. Okay. So, gentlemen, I'm proposing that we, look at this, very soon so that, we can make a more informed decision. That appeals to everybody, then we can, direct John to bring this up in our January or February meeting, whatever is convenient. That appealing? We don't have to do a motion for this, do we, Counselor?
No, not if you're just moving it along. If you're making a motion to increase, then we want a motion for that.
Thank you. That's why she gets the big bucks.
Mr. President, what kind of additional data would you?
Out. Rick brought this up. It's about,
Targeted watersheds.
yeah, the targeted watersheds, how close they are to, water bodies, that sort of thing. I don't know if that's something that requires a lot of effort.
Yeah.
But it seems that you could provide us with that data, or John, and then we can look at it. But we certainly want to do this, you know, if it's gonna benefit us, but we do want to keep this, at least in my opinion, keep this from the past, my thinking, keep this as close to the water as possible. In West Lakeland, we don't have that much water, so, you know, how would that appeal? And then there's that element of fairness, you know. Well, we want this done, but why not, or why, et cetera. Does that make sense?
President Marchand?
Yes, sir.
Would, I mean, this is for future discussion possibly,
Yeah.
but what about, one rate for some areas and then targeted areas have the higher rate in targeted areas that we determine in some way that they'll have the most benefit directly to water bodies,
Yeah,
and then $2,500 rate
yeah,
everywhere else. I don't,
that's
I'm
very
just
appealing.
throwing
We
that,
establish,
I'm just throwing stuff against the wall.
no,
here.
that's right. We establish a criterion, right?
Yeah.
To say, here's what we're gonna do. So that's another thing. Again, so I think it's kind of a long discussion. We can work something out. So. Yeah,
My only thought with that type of proposal is if we prioritize dollars to be near water bodies, those tend to be the wealthier residents of the county.
we get it. Okay. We're certainly not, how shall I say? We're aware of that. We believe that there needs to be fairness throughout our watershed district. So again, that'll be part of the discussion, and we're gonna have to review that, but that will be part of the discussion. So, and that's why I brought up the Cimarron issue, because that's a concern. You know, John sent us an article, and there's a complex economic and humanitarian concern, as I mentioned, about that. So we need to look into these things, but we're going to do it. Okay, are we good? Anybody have anything else at this point? So John, follow up with that, please.
I will.
And Miss Elizabeth, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time to hang out with us.
Yeah, any Thursday.
Okay. Your family says, oh, she's gonna get home late. Okay,
They'll be in bed.
thank you once
Thank
again.
you.
Okay. All right. Gonna leave us now?
Unless you need me for anything else.
No, ma'am.
Okay,
Safe drive.
thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Cost share program, West Lakeland Storage Site Outlet, Long Lake Structure Tri-Scape Maintenance. Recommendation for award project. This one is simple. John, we're gonna, gentlemen, if you have anything on this, it seems simple enough that we're gonna award this project to NADO companies for the contract price of $69,000, what we're gonna do here. And what they're doing is they're going to reline that steel pipe. Is that correct?
Replace it.
Replace it completely. Okay. With something better, I hope, for 69,000. Yeah. That should work. Okay. Is there anything that the managers have on this that they would like to discuss? Okay, not hearing anything. I can make a simple motion to award project to NADO companies for not more than the contract price of $69,000. And authorize myself, if I can do that, to execute the contract and then to authorize engineer Hanson to execute a change of order within the 10%, the contract amount on verbal approval from me.
Second.
So moved and seconded.
Aye.
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 Approved. Okay. Excellent. Inspection, okay. Again, this one seems fairly simple. So the pipe service is going to inspect, if they're able to, for $4,000. Depending on how difficult it is to, how difficult is it? What, do they gotta climb into something or what? Get it?
What other little robot thing?
Right. Oh, the ROV? Okay. Is that what's gonna happen? Okay. And then if they can get through it, and if they need it repaired, that's an additional $9,000, correct?
If they need to clean out debris or sediments in order to televise it, that's the.
Okay. So that's the 4, and if they can do that, 9 on top of that.
The 9 is if necessary in order to be the 4.
Okay, so it's 13 grand.
Hopefully they can do it and they don't need to do any cleaning. If they need to do some cleaning in order to televise it, then it'd be $9,000 plus the $4,000.
Okay, and then they can submit a quote for 5,000 or less to have BAR direct them to inspect the pipe in Long Lake Structure 12.
Long Lake is an outlet for Long Lake. It goes the south lobe of Long Lake. It's a submerged or almost always submerged pipe that has a trash rack on it. And when we've inspected it, if we wanted to televise it, we haven't been able to get the trash rack off. And so that's what this is about. is to try to
Okay,
get a power trash rack.
so this is going to require motion. I don't quite know how to attack this, except to essentially read what you wrote. Just say, okay, here I go. Counselor, help me if I get this wrong or if
I sure will.
okay. So I'll make a motion to hire pipe services to inspect the easternmost end of the project 1,007 pipe through Lake Elmo for $4,000. Then I want to authorize, for my motion, authorize BAR to direct pipe services to clean the easternmost end of the pipe through Lake Elmo if needed for up to and not beyond $9,000. And finally, if the pipe service submits a quote for $5,000 or less, authorize Bard to direct pipe services to inspect the pipe from Long Lake to structure 12.
That's perfect.
Do I have a second?
Second.
So moved and seconded.
Aye.
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 Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for your patience. That is approved. Okay. Video inspecting the remaining project 2007. Okay, oh, this one's good too. All right. Okay, so we're gonna monitor these systems at the frequency listed. Everybody understands this, of course, right?
Mr. President,
Yes,
you skipped a
Which one did I skip? I'm sorry.
opportunity to comment on how to see this course, but
Out of the what?
number 6 on the agenda.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, there was nothing on there, so I'm going to ask 3 times if there is anybody in the general public who would like to comment or ask us questions about the adequacy of our MS4 SW EPP. I'll ask again. Would anybody like to comment on the adequacy? And I'll ask a 3rd time. Would anybody like to comment on the adequacy? Okay. Nothing at this point, and it's too cold for the crickets. So that was good enough.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Let us move on. Okay. Right, the infrastructure and conveyance and maintenance report. Okay.
Mr. President,
Before
Josh
we get
Phillips is the primary author of this report, and he
Okay.
plans to come to the next meeting to present us some.
Okay, so we don't need to discuss it at this point. This is wonderful. Thank you. And you'll have to thank Josh for doing this for us. So,
Excuse me, does this go to our next meeting now?
Yes.
yes, sir. That means we don't have to discuss the 92,000?
No.
Okay, wow, thank you. Okay. And we don't have to do the point intercept plant survey.
Mr. President,
Right.
Meg Ratty of our office plans to attend the January 23rd meeting to summarize that report.
Minnesota Storm Research Council. What do they want? $4,000?
In the past, the Watershed District has contributed $4,000.
Gentlemen? How do you feel about this? I'll start with Rick.
Yes,
Rick's all for it.
I think that when I read through the present, the packet information, looking at the programs that they're doing, I'm impressed with them, and I think that they're things that are of importance to us. One concern I have, and this is kind of closing the loop or filling in the link, are we using this information? How do we use it? So are we as a watershed district benefiting from the research that's being done here?
Mr. Engineer, anything?
I think we are. I mean, they share the report. Our engineering happens to be a member of the committee and has worked with clients who have received the funds, so that knowledge is shared with the environment.
I think that's an important link, and I think it's worthwhile acknowledging that and recognizing that's part of the process.
Sold me, Rick. Sir?
I agree. I think it's good that we have an entity that will research things at more the local level rather than, looking at a literature search from up Chesapeake Bay or something. Having it here with our unique climate and everything, I think we're fortunate to have that group here.
Not hearing anything from the other managers. Would you like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve a contribution to the Minnesota Stormwater Research Council for $4,000.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded.
Aye.
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 It is approved. Get them that check. Very good. Thank you, gentlemen. Council. Attorney.
Yeah, thank you for the privilege of being here this evening, but I really have nothing to report. You have such a full agenda that I really have nothing to take your time up with.
Just one comment. Miss Torrey, did you see how she delivered that?
Beautifully.
Yeah. Ladies are all over it. I love this. Thank you. Thank you kindly. Okay. Inspector, what's going on?
President Marchand, managers, there was not a report in your packet, but I did drop a report by each of your desks.
You
I'll
did.
just hit some highlights from our, since our last meeting, because there's some projects that started. Bridgewater Village did start, they have stopped mass grading for the winter, and they've stopped road work on site. The city of Lake Elmo will not let them work on road infrastructure during the winter months. Bridgewater Bank, however, wants to continue with the building of the bank site. And I met on site with the developer and contractor to discuss their plan
Yeah.
for a temporary stormwater solution, because the storm sewer is not in place. So in the spring, when we have melt and runoff, what are they gonna do with this water? Where's it gonna go? How do we keep it on site? So they submitted a plan here today. I know John has not had a chance to look at it. So it's submitted to the city of Lake Elmo, to our engineers. And there's a basin on site for the future reuse system. There's also an infiltration basin that's not finished. I think they'll find a solution, but the city doesn't want them to use their road base as a storage area.
Yeah.
And we want to keep the water from going underneath Manning Avenue to the east, because there's infiltration basins that the county has jurisdiction over on the east side. So I instructed them to stabilize and protect the culverts that go that way. So we'll see. I think that has to be hashed out. I think they can find a solution, but they're really determined to continue their construction for the winter. So as long as they control their spring runoff, we should be okay. But again, John will need to look at that and they'll make a comment back to them.
Okay.
Couple other things that I remember, if the managers remember, there was a septic mound system near a wetland over in Lake Elmo. That work was completed and stabilized, well done, no issues there. The other couple of things, the Goddard School at Black Diamond started moving dirt and then hit cold weather. I'm not sure if they'll continue with any excavation. Sometimes they'll just strip the topsoil and then get enough so they can get in and put footings in to start the building. So I'm not sure where they're at there. The other one was the Herman Shoreline. If the managers remember the gentleman who came in to talk about the boulder wall, retaining walls, removing the old railroad tie system that was in there. So they did start that work. I was out there to look at the site. And the contractor is going to work as long as they can until conditions won't allow, but they've removed most of the old retaining wall, which was deteriorating. It was all railroad ties. It was pretty bad. And they are dropping in like boulder walls. They're going to try to, make sure they stabilize everything when they're done. There is protection at the lake, so.
They're doing this now with these temperatures?
They were doing it last week. They were doing it before we had the hard freeze, because
Right.
they could dig everything out. They could place the boulders in place. I think their concern was more about if they get a lot of snow, they have limited access. They have to weave their way between two houses. I mean, literally they have 12 feet passageway to work. So, a boulder comes in and something has to go out. They have to ferry all this stuff back and forth. So it's kind of a tedious project, but I think it'll, it should be a nice project when they're done. So, other than that, I believe that should be enough for now, unless you have any questions.
No, sir. I figure we're in the deep freeze now, so things are gonna slow down. So I thank you kindly. Do the managers have anything for our inspector? Thank you, Mr. Brown. Okay. Let's square away managers. The resolution approving the 2025 budget. Okay. We just need a motion here and a signature, is that correct?
Mr. President, final levy documents are due to Ramsey and Washington County. They say December 31st, depending on which attorney, sometimes it's December 15th, so I always try to do the December 15th.
I was thinking 15.
Thank you. Okay. So this just requires a motion for resolution 2024-03 approving the 2025 budget and payable year 2025 final property tax levy. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded.
Aye.
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 It is approved. There is signature required.
Right, there is a resolution there.
My electronic signature.
Should be signed.
Big X. I like the electronic, I don't have to get my hand
Could use my electronic signature also.
and paint. I'm kidding. All right, that's squared away. The Minnesota Watershed's annual conference. Gentlemen, don't hold back. Anybody have any comments?
Very cold up there.
Yeah. Who in their right
Not as
mind?
cold as today.
What about Gull Lake, man? It looked like an ocean with white caps. And so some guy was in his boat and I go, what are you doing?
Yeah, light was good this year.
Wow. I thought it was interesting. I hope that was, the watershed, the Minnesota watersheds, got a good deal on that place. I was impressed. After that football game, I tried to figure out how to get home to my room, and fortunately I have a compass on my phone, so I just went that way and I didn't go into the lake, so I made it. You know, dark. So,
I thought it was good. Wednesday I sat in the manager's session and they went through plan updates, which we were right in the midst of. So not like any one of us as managers probably could have fought that session.
yeah,
Because Greg has been so good working with us. But there was one thing towards the end, guy with the bow tie job, the attorney with the bow tie.
It was
Yeah.
I only know him as Mr.
Bow tie man. Yeah. He, and Bill, you were in the session too, but he said one thing I just wanted to follow up with our council on. If I understood him right, he was going through the open meeting, act
Yep.
or law.
we're all there.
And he said that again, if I understood him right,
Sure.
if we have a committee meeting, either established or ad hoc, meeting outside of our regular meeting, even if there's not a quorum of managers, that should be noticed.
It should, it really should.
And I was not aware of that.
You just
So,
don't want to take any risk, even if people kind of go socially afterward, and grab a beverage or something, you just have to really be careful that all stems from a case that happened down in Afton. And it was really a couple of council members talking around the water cooler a lot, which seemed to kind of influence votes, and the citizens never really got to know what was going on. So it's just better safe than sorry.
okay, well, that was news to me, so
Sorry.
I just wanted to bring that up tonight and see if you get clarification.
I'm not here to say that you'd really necessarily get nicked on it, but it's the appearance of impropriety on that.
Yeah.
That decisions are being made two at a time. And so until a whole can be created.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all. But I thought the overall thing was great.
Yeah, it was pretty good. And a couple
Really pleased that, chloride issues came up frequently, and it seems like things are maturing there in terms of finding ways to address the issues.
Yeah, and I sat in on a couple of bar lectures, and John, please say hi to Miss Janet for us. She was very good. Speak. And then the one, and I don't know if you guys are aware of this one, but the nano bubbles, yeah. It seems promising, but in a very, very limited way or oversimplified way. So you shove a pipe into a lake and pump a bunch of air into it, and somehow that reduces hydrogen sulfide and other pollutants and helps restore the lake, so to speak, at an astronomical cost of operating the pump, electrical. But it was still wonderful to check that out. And the other things we did. And I thought their fare wasn't bad at all. So,
I thought our luncheon speaker was outstanding.
yes, Miss Angie, yeah.
Yeah.
She brought a different side to what we're used to hearing. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Don?
So some kind of high level observations,
Yeah.
we had to go to a larger place because we were too big for Fairwood, and we had even more attendance this year, so I don't know.
Oh, we did, okay.
If it was a global record over time, but it was certainly a local high spot, so the watersheds, they've got 3 watersheds that have come back, I think Bear Lake, Spring Lake, and a couple others, so this is all really good. If you look in your inbox, you should have a request for a survey on how things went.
I do.
Please respond to that. Another option for a location would be St. Cloud, and they do have a very good convention center at St. Cloud.
Closer.
However, St. Cloud's not available next year, so we'll probably be back at Grandview next year. But if we get feedback in a timely fashion from the survey, maybe we could consider St. Cloud for 2026 as an option. I thought Grandview was great. I mean,
Oh, yeah, no
it
doubt.
was only up to the place one at a time, but we were even crowded there. I mean, if you recall, a lot of the breakout rooms were pretty tight, and there was a lot of standing room only in a number of those sessions. So decide if we stay there next year, we likely will, and that we have a board of directors meeting in the morning. We'll probably.
I was impressed with my room.
Yeah, I think there's some things that we'll try to tweak next year at Grandview if we stay there, so.
Fireplace, switch.
Yeah, and then, some other observations, not necessarily about the conference that I share with you. Then I'll ask you to just keep this to yourself, because some of it's gonna be approved tomorrow at the board of directors meeting. We're gonna firm up our committee assignments, and Gene Tiedemann apparently isn't interested in chairing the legislative committee, so Jan has asked me to chair the legislative committee, which is, about as much fun as a pointed stick in the eye, but I've been over there enough to know the process where I'm willing to give it a go. I would like the managers to really think, if they went to the session that Matt and Jess put on from our new lobbyist LGN, they really emphasized the value of individual board members reaching out to the local elected officials. You can either do that on your own with a phone call. You're their resource for water. A lot of them don't really know what we do, and it's up to us to really educate them on it. We could either do that during our legislative session in February, where we have an evening social. We invite local elected or any elected officials that are in town for the legislative session to come to an evening social and get to meet managers and learn about watershed management. And then the next day is an opportunity to actually set up meetings at the office of your local official. The good thing that's gonna happen, and again, this hasn't been approved yet. It will be hopefully tomorrow. We've decided to identify 2 legislative priorities, because a lobbying group cannot work on a lot of things. They can only effectively attack a couple of things. One of them was gonna be chloride. Good, so this is good. In fact, there was a resolution passed that with the limited liability, legislation we're trying to get after that, and that's not dead, by the way, there's still conversations going on, so that might come along eventually, but they're actually gonna start pushing for regulatory approaches to chloride management. And what that is right now, we don't really know, but it could be some type of promoting some type of ordinances that will limit what we've already experienced this year with extreme amounts of salt being placed out in parking lots and whatnot. So that's a good thing.
I just want to say too, this guy did an outstanding job running resolutions, part of the meeting on Friday.
So 13 resolutions. I was kind of tired. We finally got done.
Yeah, especially the middle state camera with resolutions.
Right.
What time did you guys finish?
We finished before noon. I didn't
Oh,
Like
I was
2
surprised.
minutes before noon.
Nice.
11:30, 11:40 or so. Go through it. So, the new, there's a new president of the board. I nominated him, crying out loud, Brad, from down at Shell Lake.
Okay.
Oh,
I don't know where my brain is tonight, but so he'll be the new president, so Watershed, so
And Miss Jan,
she's doing great. I
Yeah.
mean, she's
she was wonderful.
fantastic. I mean, her executive skill set is
She worked hard. She did
is
so much.
outstanding. Yeah, and she, she really is enjoying this new job.
Her hospitality, just so many things.
Oh, yeah. So I think Minnesota Watershed is doing really well right now, so.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Mr. Bill, doesn't stack up to Vietnam or anything.
No. I mean, I'd make a motion, we move to Florida next year. Other than that, I thought the breakouts, who decides how they put together the breakout sessions? Because I thought there were some really interesting ones this year.
So there is a committee on events and education, and I'm gonna guess they probably solicit topics from. I mean, they open it up to submit, just like any conference, if you want to give a presentation on something, you go ahead and, hey, let's give a talk on this project, and it gets submitted, and then the events and education people get together and put the program together.
At 8 a.m. After breakfast. Okay. Very good. Very good. You too, Rick? Didn't you guys go on like some power run before everything? Weren't you guys exercising?
Not me.
You just walked around.
Oh, you did? Okay. I thought, because I saw
running,
people, I was going,
a little
what?
chilly for that.
These people are exercising. Go eat breakfast. Oh my God.
Getting up there from my cabin, that was an exercise.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, it was. I did that too. And I didn't get lost. Okay. Well, this is wonderful news. So we'll have more information to share with you and to see if we can make the event even more exciting or whatever it is that we need to do. All right. Annual conference is covered. Now our annual meeting. I'll reflect on 2024 suggestions. Okay, let's get into this. Did the gentlemen have anything? I think we've kind of been going over this. I don't know if you guys want to have a discussion on the reflection of what we've done.
Typically, you would suspend your regular meeting, and then actually you have a motion to start your annual meeting, then you do your annual meeting.
Oh, do we? Okay, I wasn't aware.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'm not used to the practices of this board, but I was thinking that there would be I don't know if, I'm sorry about the rest of the agenda. Is there some other items on your regular agenda? Beyond?
Just what we're gonna do now, the election of officials and.
Yeah, so, but I mean, are you gonna need to resume the regular meeting for?
I thought this would all just be part of our
to
meeting.
adjourn.
Yeah, so otherwise, I mean, you could close the regular meeting if there is no other matters before the board, and then you would start your annual meeting.
So just check off your
Yeah,
check-in
number
for the next two meetings and then we'll adjourn.
Yep.
Then we'll open the annual meeting. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, okay, yeah, let's do that. So I need to make a motion. No?
No, just
Just
do,
confirm January 9th.
just do that.
Oh, okay. All right, is everybody gonna be available for our January 9th and 23rd meetings? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, very good. That's covered. Now,
So a motion to adjourn the regular meeting?
motion to adjourn the regular meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded. So,
Aye.
aye,
Aye.
okay,
A motion to commence the annual. meeting.
right. So I'd like to make a motion to commence the annual meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded.
Aye.
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 Okay. All right, so our meeting is in. I don't, we didn't do this last year, like, we haven't done this before, but whatever, I'm good with this. I trust you.
Thank you.
You bet. Okay,
I'm keeping us, I mean, I'm just making sure everybody's alert.
No, you're
right.
does anybody have anything on the 2024 meeting format, procedures, roles, anything? My guess is that everything is status quo, correct? Okay, then I would like to move to the issue of electing our officers. Based on feedback, based on what we're doing, I would like to I can make this motion, right?
Yes, you
Okay,
may.
I would like to make a motion that we keep our same positions for the next year. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded.
Who seconded that? Thank you.
I don't know.
They both did.
I like it. It works.
Aye.
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 Thank you, gentlemen, and thank you very much for your input. Now, our professional services. I don't think we need to make a change for accounting, auditing, engineering, and legal. I would like to make a motion to keep them the same. I have a second.
Second.
So moved and seconded. Yes, sir.
Question.
Discussion.
We have proposals with various hourly rates and that sort of thing that might be different from last year. Do we need to
Gone out.
approve those, the new rates or?
In the past year.
Okay, all right. That was just,
No, I'm
sorry,
glad
that
you
was
asked,
just-
but yeah.
Just a question. I
I
didn't
know.
want to
I know
approve that,
everything's-
have them upset because they're at their old rate.
Everything's gone up. Whatever, you're like $600 an hour now, right?
I just noticed what it is, and I'm thinking, really? No.
Oh, no, I want to, the attorney says, I need to make a change. Thank you, Ms. Tracy. Okay. So I made that motion and I have a second. Mr. Bill?
Aye.
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 That is all approved. Thank you, ladies. We want to continue with your legal services. We're happy.
And may I interject, it's an honor for us to be.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, the firm has been here since the district was founded, but we don't expect that that's just what happens. We need to earn it. And I
Thank
just
you,
want
Ms.
you to know
Tracy.
that there's a whole firm
You
here
did.
with some great future growth.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for
bringing
giving
her
us this
forward. Yeah,
opportunity.
we're happy.
There's always Mr. Bowtie.
Thank you. I know, Bill.
Down there.
I was sweating there. a little bit.
He was like a plaid bow tie with a striped shirt and
That's
I
all I
was
know
going,
about it.
he looked like a color pattern. Oh, was that, sorry. Oh, that wasn't out of line. Okay. Okay, review and revise the necessary contract for inspection services? No, I don't think we need to do that. Does anybody have a comment on that? Or want to, have a discussion? Yes, sir.
My only comment is I would like to make sure that we approve the increased rate in the contract that was proposed here. It's a possibility.
Okay. Yeah,
So with the 2.5% or whatever it was.
yeah. That's the way it is, I guess. I'm okay with that. Do we need to make a motion for that or you just? Okay, I'd like to make a motion to keep our contract for inspection services.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
Aye.
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 Just to be clear, that included 2.5% increase from this year's.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Are you in on
Yes.
that? Rick, don't tell anybody. I'm the Rick. Don't tell anybody, but I love you. Thank you, sir. You got, hey, oh, that wasn't free. You know, I had the honeycomb.
Oh, yeah.
I had some for Thanksgiving. And I don't care if there's larvae or anything in it, you just get me some. Maybe next year.
Next year.
It was good. Yeah, sorry, too much information. Yeah, they had it out on a tray and I just, okay, enough of that. Name individuals to serve on district's advisory committees. We have a list of individuals. I can't think of anyone else outside of those people. Is everybody? Yes, sir.
So I have
Yeah.
a neighbor just down below me and I'm telling him that I've been trying to get back to him to talk about Watershed District stuff. He seems to be interested in environmental type stuff. And so what is our process for adding new members to CAC? Can it just be approved at any board meeting?
Yeah.
There's a form that they can fill out and they can be approved.
Easy enough? Okay. So. That added, would you like to make a motion?
Sure. Oh, well, go ahead. Are we looking at both the technical and?
Number 5.
Okay. Yeah, I'll go ahead and move that we approve, membership in our Citizens Advisory Committee as listed in our Technical Advisory Committee for all of the communities so represented, including the conservation districts in Washington and the counties.
I will
as
second.
presented in item 5.
I will second that motion.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
All right, that is approved. Okay, the schedule for the 2025 regular board meeting. I would like to keep those the same. As you guys know, this is why we have 2 meetings a month. Sounds good? Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Very good, that's approved. Any changes with our bylaws, per diem policies? Everybody's okay with everything? Anything you'd like to add or change or discuss? This requires a motion as well, doesn't it? Okay. At this time, I would like to make a motion that we not make any changes to our bylaws, per diem policy, code of conduct policies, investment and depository policies.
Second.
So moved and seconded.
Aye.
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 Okay, that is approved. Thank you, gentlemen. Designate the official Valley Branch Watershed district newspaper and bank. Didn't we go? Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, Mr. President, I don't want to speak out of line, but there's there's a resolution that passed on Friday that's germane to number 8 here, that
Yeah.
it's a resolution, so nothing's happened yet. Would you like me to describe that?
Yeah, of course.
That would be to allow
It's germane to
watershed districts to post their meetings on their website and not require them to publish them in a newspaper.
It's a great idea.
Yeah.
So that would probably require, I think that might require a statute change in the district law. So whether that happens or not.
I'm sorry, what were you proposing?
It's a resolution that passed at the Minnesota Watershed's annual business meeting last Friday to have it be that watershed meetings can get posted simply by publishing on the Watershed District's website and not in a newspaper.
And it's so practical.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how people are getting their notices. That's such a, I hope that
Sadly, the newspaper industry is a dying industry as well, so.
Yeah, there was rural areas, spoke up. They don't have any active newspapers in their area.
My dogs can't even chase the newspaper guy anymore. Whatever. It's really sad. They don't bite them or anything.
You can chase an iPad.
There's all those Amazon trucks they can chase though.
Yeah, they do come around. Okay. So then we're not going to designate an official newspaper.
No, I think we still do. We still do, because it's not, the law hasn't changed yet.
Oh,
It's just
okay,
a-
never
A
mind.
glimmer of hope.
Then
for future
we
years.
used the Pioneer Press this year. So I would like to keep the Pioneer Press as our designated official newspaper. Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And our bank is now going to be US Bank, correct?
We designated it last year and
Okay.
we need to
We'll
designate
keep
it
it
again
again.
this year, yes.
So,
I move, we designate US Bank as our official bank.
seconded, thank you, sir.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
okay. With that done, now we, Adjourn. I would like to make a motion to adjourn our annual meeting.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
Aye.
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 Now, now I'd like to make a motion to reinstate.
Didn't we?
Is
Is there any other?
No, we're
items?
adjourned.
Yeah, we already finished.
Wait a minute.
So we're done.
So we're done. So we're officially adjourned. Yeah.